All right, welcome back, everybody. Today's extra special guest that we have on is none other than Dennis Bunnik from Bunnik Tours and Cato and lots of other different hats that he wears.
Hello.
He has very kindly given us his time today and jumped on to share what's happening in his world and especially the Cato stuff, which we're really interested in. Just to give us a bit of an update. So welcome, Dennis. Thanks for jumping on.
Thanks for having me, and congratulations on this channel and stuff that you're doing, Matt. Really well needed and well done. Fantastic.
Thank you. And we won't let you get off without giving us your backstory and your journey into the industry and what led to where you guys are at today with Bunnik Tours and everything else. It'd be great to hear sort of how all that panned out.
Yeah, no worries. I was always destined to be in the travel industry. Mum was working in the travel industry since before I was born. Born in Holland, and we used to travel around a lot. Moved to Australia when I was 7, and again, travel was always part of what we do. And my parents said, right, you have to finish year 12. If you finish year 12, we'll buy you a ticket to anywhere you want to go in the world. So that was my trip and my gap year. I got on a plane and traveled around Europe for a year. The plan then was to go to university, become an accountant or a stockbroker, work on Wall Street and in the world of finance. Fell in love with travel even more. Came back and said, right, I'm going to earn some more money, potentially be a garbo or do something and then continue backpacking. And that set the alarm bells off with my parents. And they said, oh, there's this new travel course that's just started here in Adelaide. It's a diploma in tourism management. And in second year, you can do an industry placement overseas. Oh, that sounds good. So I did that, ended up 6 months in London working for Hilton Hotels. That was in 1989. And when I finished in 91, moved over to London and did a management traineeship with Hilton, then worked for Qantas Holidays over there. Did become a chartered management accountant while I was over there. So it was in the world of finance, but then in the travel industry side of things. Headed back to Australia end of 94, just as my mother, Marion, was talking about opening up a travel agency. And I said, oh, I'll join you. And I helped put the TCF application in. And on the 15th of March in 95, Marion Bunnik Travel opened its doors. There was 3 of us. And my brother joined us a couple of months later. He was, in fact, doing his industry placement with Singapore Airlines at the time. And we've been a family business ever since. So the 3 of us are now joint CEOs. And ironically, on the very day that we turned 25 is the day that we suspended our entire touring program due to COVID, 15th of March 2020. It's been a bit of an interesting journey over the years.
Yeah, I think was it a Friday the 13th? I think somebody.
Yeah, but on that Sunday, on the Sunday the 15th, we came in and that was the time that we made the decision. This is it. Borders it's too difficult now. Borders were closing all over the world. And it was, we made the decision the next day. That was the last of the tours. All tours then stopped. And like everybody else, we were caught up in this whirlwind. The initial thought was that all the tours on the ground could keep operating until they've finished, and unless the clients wanted to come home sooner. But by the Tuesday or the Wednesday, we were in full repatriation mode, and nobody had the choice anymore. Everybody came home.
And
yeah, go on.
I guess, and since that time, we're at 3.5 months since then. Now, how's the world looked for you, sort of personally, professionally, everything that that you've got going on with all your different hats? How's it all been for you?
Look, it's fair to say, like everybody, it's been an absolute shit show. This year, we're all in a position we don't want to be in. And you say it's 3.5 months. It almost feels like it was about a month, 6 weeks ago. And we were talking about this at our all of company meeting last week, where there's really a two two time frames within all of this. For those of us who've been, at the forefront and we've been busier than ever, and time seems to be going really, really quickly. Unfortunately, for those who have been stood down and are now working far less, time is moving, and for clients who, and they're not traveling and stuff, time is moving incredibly slowly. So it probably seems that we're already 6 months in. The reality is it's somewhere in the middle. So yeah, I'm actually looking forward to a break. I'm heading to the Barossa Valley on Friday night, and then for a few days in the Flinders Ranges next week for a bit of camping. So that'll be the first real break since all of this started.
And slightly different to the possible calendar that we can see behind you, that I think you said might have your whole traveling sort of dates and where you should be in around the world.
Yeah.
Barossa for the weekend probably wasn't necessarily.
It wasn't. No. Next week I was supposed to be at Flight Centre Global rather than in the Flinders Ranges.
Yeah.
I don't think I'll be drinking as much in in the Flinders Ranges. Well, we do this every year at the beginning of the year with Marion, Sasha, and myself, where we try to coordinate, who's out of the office when. And this is the only trip that went ahead this year. January, February, I was in the Middle East, Egypt, Israel, and Jordan. My tour guide training trip through Europe, where I was going to be doing training in 10 different cities over the course of a month. That didn't happen. And in May, June, I was supposed to be escorting our very first departure of the 5 Stands tour. Didn't happen either. So it's up there as a reminder. And hopefully, look, we will all be traveling again one day. So we'll make it up.
Yeah, and look, obviously, getting you on today, we really want to hear about, what's happening in the Cato space. So we'll get you to throw that hat on for a second, and stranger to YouTube fame, but the video that you did do around the refunds and cancellations and so forth, was really well received across the industry, and I know a lot of agents use that video themselves on their own personal social media pages and so forth to really help explain to their customers and to the traveling community, what we were going through and what it looked like, and that was obviously a very articulate way to help the community understand the process. So, tell us what led you to making that video and what's been the response since.
Yeah, look, I wish we'd actually done it about a month or 6 weeks earlier, and I suppose that's one of the demonstrations or highlights, how a little bit disjointed the industry was, and how we need a more coordinated approach. Like all of us, personally, I was absolutely devastated seeing that the industry that I love and have spent my entire working life in falling apart around me. So many good people have left. So many good people will leave the industry because it's just not sustainable the way that we're all living at the moment. And then on top of that, we found ourselves in a position where suddenly we were the bad guys, and that's in the eye of the public, and that should never have happened. It should never ever have got to that stage. And I've always been brought up, if you see something and you've got the ability to do something about it and you can fix it, just do it. And it turns out I'm not shy when it comes to being in front of a camera. Get a bit of stick for that. But I did have the ability to do a video like that, and I think it was needed. Somebody needed to articulately, if I can say the word.
Isn't that ironic?
Yeah. Explain how the whole industry works and how the processes work, while it's actually not our fault, and that we are on the consumer side. Unfortunately, as an industry, we really stuffed it up when it came to the PR. We lost the PR war very, very early. And part of that is because as an industry, we never had one overarching strategy around PR and communication. And contrast that to real estate. We're at the moment, even now, every week there's a good news story about how now is the best time to buy or sell a house or rent or not rent or, whatever. Travel industry never had that. The travel industry relied on individuals and individual companies who didn't necessarily work together overly well. And we relied on and I suppose we trusted the media to tell our story. But it's a complicated story. So explaining what happens in a travel refund setting and where the money is can't be done in a 30-second soundbite, especially where the media is looking for a particular angle or something like that. So what we needed was a circuit breaker. And this video ended up being that circuit breaker, and it was designed to take the pressure, especially the mental health pressure, off the frontline staff, whether that be retail travel consultants, travel agency managers, the staff on the phones at the tour operator and the supplier levels, as well as the airline staff. And as I said, I wish we had done it 6 weeks earlier, but we were all busy working on our own businesses and just trying to get through that process. So yeah, it hurts me greatly that the industry had to go through what it went through. Especially the frontline staff. Nobody deserved the amount of abuse that we got, and the unreasonableness from some clients. Bear in mind that the vast majority of Australians have been fantastic. The vast majority of clients have been absolutely fantastic, very supportive. And we're seeing that now. We've launched a fund through Bunnik Tours for our tour guides around the world, because they're all self-employed freelancers, so they're all unemployed now, and a lot of times they fall through the cracks in terms of government assistance. So we've put this fund in place, asking clients whether they want to donate some of their funds, some of their travel credits to the tour guide, so we can pay them something, and we kicked in 10 grand to kickstart that out, and in the space of 2 weeks we've raised 8 grand from customers. But the number of comments and responses that we've had, that's been the real wonderful, that's been the really nice, heartwarming thing that's come out of this. And in essence, that's what it should have been from the beginning. So yeah, the video was designed to try and reset the image and reset the conversation.
And we kind of shouldn't be shocked by it, or shouldn't have been shocked by it, given that we all know in the industry that a disgruntled customer is going to tell 10 people or 20 people, or with social media, as many people as they possibly can these days. And a really happy customer and a satisfied customer may tell 1 or 2 or a few people, or may give you a nice review if they can be bothered or get around to it. So, when this happened, it wasn't shocking. Hindsight's a beautiful thing, but it wasn't shocking that those minority of people were going to kick up a massive stink. And the media were going to get hold of it, and that's what we were going to hear, as opposed to the 90% of people that were just understanding and understood what was happening, and just were more concerned about agents' welfare and are you okay, and yeah, whatever you need, and you don't worry about us, you do what you need to. But those people aren't going to be super vocal on social media or in the media, or that's not a good news story. The news teams aren't going to call up, Betty and Barry and ask them about how they're feeling about being okay with their money sitting there for a few more months and being able to travel next year, and that they were just really appreciative that their agent, made the phone calls and kept them in the loop. Like after 2 minutes of telling that story, they're like, okay, well that's not going to create headlines, and
no.
Move on. And that's just the challenge we face in that space, I guess.
Yeah, look, it is. But I think, we should have been better at explaining the why. Explaining the why around refunds and why it was taking so long. And in the video I talk about Emirates and the fact that, their refund capacity was 35,000 a month, and now they've got 500,000 refunds backlog. And explaining it in that way, and it actually makes sense, and people then understand it. So what it did, it took the heat out of it. And unfortunately, you talk about the good news stories. If ever there was an example of when you should be using a travel agent, and you should be the travel agents and tour operators and wholesalers really looked after customers. Just that repatriation side of things, the cruise companies are the same. They're all the good news stories that ended up being overshadowed in all of this. We saw the same after the Egypt Revolution. The Edjo Revolution, the people that were on the government evacuation flights 4 days, 5 days after the revolution broke out, were all the people that were either backpackers, expats, or that booked themselves online, and that was stuck. Everybody that had booked through a travel agent, everybody that had booked through a tour operator, they were already long gone. And that ended up being a really good news story. And we used that a lot in our training, and the industry used that as a good example. Here, we could have had that same example. And there were millions of examples of, the stuff that Chimu did, the stuff that a whole load of travel agents going above and beyond to help their clients. It was overshadowed, and it could have been avoided.
It felt like, it was kind of like, at the time, we're all kind of sort of really quite positive around the fact that we thought that was going to be our narrative coming out of this. We're going to be able to use all these great stories to have to use this as saying, hey, without a travel agent, you're on your own, and all of those things. I think we just kind of sat around maybe thinking that was just going to eventually come out. And then all of a sudden this negative stuff just came over the top and just smashed us. And we didn't see it coming for some reason. And we just thought, I don't know, maybe there was a bit of arrogance in there or somewhere that we thought, well, we're all sort of running around saying, oh, look what we're doing as an industry now. Agents are the best, and you're all stuffed if you're not with an agent. But never really, as you said, articulated it or really, got on the proactive front foot in a PR sense. And then the negative stuff hit us. It was just,
and look, it all comes down to, you need a coordinated approach. There are some, we're all competitors to a certain extent in the industry, but we're actually all in this together, and we work well together. And I must say, in the tour operating wholesale side, there is far more unity in terms of working together than there is in the retail side. In the retail side, you've got the blue camp, you've got the red camp, and are they ever going to come together for a consumer-friendly PR strategy and campaign? Probably not. The thing is, now is the time that it's actually needed. Now is the time that whole conversation needs to be reset. And Cato was able to do it as part of that refunds process, right? Because that's our domain. It's our suppliers who are helping to process these refunds and are setting the terms and conditions in terms of refunds for tours and wholesalers and stuff like that. But there needs to be a broader strategy, and that's where I'd like to see, if as an industry we can all come together collaboratively and move beyond those differences that we've got, then something good will come out of all of this.
And I guess it's just sort of speaking about Cato and you guys coming together, you've recently had the AGM, record number of nominees vying for board positions. That's all done and dusted now. How is that process, and how's that sort of, as this situation escalated, did you feel like you were already going to get a ton of interest in wanting to be a part of it, or is it all just sort of come off the back of what's been going on?
No, it's been something that's been building for quite some time. So over the last, I've been chair now for the last 5 years, and we've transitioned from being a networking organisation through to a fully fledged industry association. And part of that was resourcing. So whereas in the past to be a member, it cost you $350 a year, and you got bugger all for it. Now it's costing you several $1,000s, but we're properly resourced. So we have a full-time managing director in Brett Jardine, who spent 10 years in running Clear, and has before that had 20 years in the industry, working for various tour operators and wholesalers and stuff. So very highly capable executive who's running the organisation. And what we're working on is building the capability of the industry and working together for the greater good. We represent the land supply sector in the same way that IATA represents air and CLIA represents cruise. Now, we work then collaboratively, exactly that word, with together. We work together with the other association and with AFTA. We've always had a very close working relationship with AFTA. The good thing about our board is that any member has got an equal opportunity to come onto the board. So as where 3 years ago we were having to tap people on the shoulder saying, "Oh, please join the committee, please join the board." Last year we had our first ever election where we had 6 people vying for 5 positions. This year we had 11 for 6, which is fantastic. And it's good. The level of engagement that we've got has been fantastic from the membership, but also from the wider travel agency and travel industry.
And obviously, as you said, working together collectively, that's the goal. And we saw recently that there was a bit of a call to arms, or for you guys and for yourself, putting out there to the wider industry and industry folk to email through ideas and suggestions of how we can stand together, be part of that long-term solution.
Yes.
And how do you see that sort of evolving? I know it's only early days. You've probably got a little bit of stuff starting to trickle through, and
yeah.
we'll see, put out the email address again at the bottom of this video and get people in the group to contribute as well. But where do you see that going, and how's it been going so far?
Really good. Again, the genesis of that, or the idea around that was, let's see if we can actually make all this pain worth it. This year is testing all of our resilience on a personal level, a business level, an industry level, and we're all looking at how we can make ourselves better. I know every company is looking at their processes and their systems and their staffing and saying, okay, well, how can we come out of this stronger? Let's also do that from an industry perspective, but try and think a little bit broader than the way that we've always done it in the past. This industry is made up of sectors. And, if we admit it, we all like to whinge about the other sectors. Everybody likes to have a go at the airlines, and the airlines are always having a go at the travel agents or, the tour operators that want wholesale airfares and this sort of stuff. And let's actually step beyond that and see, okay, what can we do for the collective good? How, we're now being given the opportunity to actually get to the bottom of the to-do list. To look in that drawer that's got all of those ideas that we never were able to get to. And how can we reset? How can we make sure that if something like this happens, we don't go through this same shitstorm? So that we do have that collective PR strategy in place, so that travel insurance does actually cover a pandemic or these sorts of things, so that we come out as looking the good guys in the eyes of the consumer than the way that it's come out now. And the industry reform is difficult when everybody's flat out. So what are the opportunities here? And I know this is potentially a little bit pie in the sky, but if only a third of the ideas that are generated actually do something, then it's better than what we've got. So, so far we've had about a dozen submissions in, emails in from people. The vast majority from travel agents, which has been absolutely fantastic. I've got them all in the one inbox at the moment, and we'll then print them all out, work my way through them, and then we'll as Cato, we will work with all of the other industry associations to do what we need to do. Let's not be combative. Let's not focus purely on our own sectors. Let's look a little bit broader. So if anybody is listening out there and you've got some suggestions on what will make this industry better, send it through. The email address will be below. Send it through, and let's see if we can make something good come out of this.
All right, then let's flip it on to you then, and say, if you were the person that was having to send that email through,
mm-hmm.
what's in your subject line of that email, and what's in the body of the email as well? What would be one suggestion that you have personally, from your Bunnik hat, or just your personal industry experience hat? What would your suggestion be through to yourself and the others that will get these suggestions, and how you're going to sort of work to implement them into the industry?
Yeah, well, I suppose the main ones from my perspective, this PR side of things. You know, having a proper PR strategy in place that resets the narrative, the story, on using not only Australian-based travel agents, using Australian-based tour operators and tour wholesalers. You know, the way we travel is different to how people travel out of America or out of Europe. You know, we travel further and longer than anybody else. So having, and that's the great thing about the Cato membership. You've got some fantastic niche operators in there and destinational specialists out there who really understand the Australian traveller and create some fantastic product. Getting that across, you know, combine that with your Australian travel agents. And I've always said Australian travel agents are the best in the world, because they have to be, because we travel further and longer than everybody else. You know, there is no such thing as a quick, cheap package holiday here as such as what you have in Europe. So getting that across, I think, is really important, because that is what underpins the strength of our industry. And unless, you know, we all survive out of this, everybody's going to be booking with Expedia or, you know, the generic, and that's not going to be good for anybody. So that's one of the big things. The other one is, I do think we need reforms around cancellation charges, booking terms and conditions, travel insurance. That's another big story, and you know, there is work happening in that area. Certainly AFTA and Cato have already started down that path with standardised terms and conditions for members. For travel agents. None of us knew what force majeure was, and certainly didn't know whether any of our booking terms and conditions had a force majeure clause. You know, now we all do. We now understand the importance of it. Travel insurance, it needs to be available, and it needs to be suitable. You know, and a good example of that is we do a Moscow to Prague tour. So Emirates is doing temperature checks in Dubai. So you've got a client couple is heading over to Moscow. They pick up the sniffle on the flight from Melbourne to Dubai, and they've got a temperature and they're denied boarding. So they no-show for their tour. Who pays for that? You know, what does that new reality look like? Is travel insurance going to cover that? Now, if that client, in putting their bins out that morning, slipped over and broke a leg, travel insurance would cover it completely. But they get denied boarding because they've picked up a temperature in Dubai. You know, so yeah, there are discussions that need to be had with travel insurance industry and the travel industry broadly about, you know, how we tackle those things. So there's some of the areas of reform. No doubt there are a whole lot of others, and that's why we want to try and get as broad an input as possible.
And I think we all know that our industry runs off consumer confidence. Like that's just the end. There's nothing else to really talk about. It all boils down to consumer confidence. You know, whether they've got the money to spend on travel or they don't. And if they've got the money to spend it, you know, have they got the confidence to travel to where they want to go?
Yeah.
You know, with safety, health, you know, whatever. But it all comes down to the confidence to actually be able to do it. So PR is going to help with giving consumers confidence in booking with agents and booking with wholesalers and tour companies. Insurance is going to give them confidence that they can travel. If they have to cancel, they can cancel. Terms and conditions standardized is going to give them confidence that everybody knows exactly what it is. You know, all of these things are all going to boil down to, does that give the consumer confidence or does it not? And if it doesn't, how can we do it differently? And that's kind of where I see it, you know, because we need, it's like the petrol stations need people driving their cars for them to be viable. Whether you believe it, that it's the right thing or not for the environment, that's not the topic of the conversation. The
Yeah.
example is to just go, well, we all saw when everybody was at home, the petrol went down to 79 cents.
Yeah.
So the petrol industry needs consumers confident enough to get in their cars to drive wherever they need to. We know a long weekend comes up, prices go up in petrol because they know that they're all going to head off on their long weekend trips, because we know the consumers have the confidence to do a day trip or to go away for the weekend.
Yeah.
So that, as an industry, it's what I see, and lots and lots of conversations with everyone across the industry is that's the key. So if people are watching and they're about to do a suggestion or put forward some ideas, my I guess advice and my thoughts are: does your suggestion help with consumer confidence, or does it not?
Yes.
Because it has to, otherwise there's no real point in exploring it. So how we all collectively can come together to make that happen, that's going to benefit everybody, whether you're red or blue or whatever color it is. The confidence is key, and we need consumers with that confidence, and we can't control a lot of that. We will see some financial confidence, be tested through self-funded retirees. I've caught your disease. Possible unemployment, or not possible, but unemployment and everything that will come from JobKeeper and JobSeeker and all the things will happen. So the confidence, if we can't control that side of the confidence, but that we can control the actual confidence of people that can afford to travel and choose to use their disposable income on travel, then we need to make sure that we do everything within our power to give them that confidence.
Yeah, exactly. That consumer confidence is key, and for the long-term viability of the industry, we need to look at where are the major risks. How can we overcome these risks to ensure that we are able to all withstand something like this in the future. One of the big things that's come out of all of this is there's going to be a massive brain drain out of the travel industry, and when the consumer confidence returns and the borders reopen, will we have the capacity to handle everything? The most recent example, I suppose, is the Arab Spring and the revolution in Egypt. That absolutely devastated the travel industry in Egypt and Jordan and Israel. And in Egypt and Jordan in particular, what happened is, all investment in the industry stopped, and a lot of good people left. So then, when confidence did return, all of those cracks started to show. So, the product, the Nile cruise ships, the hotels were all pretty tired because no money had been invested in them. The service standards at hotels weren't very good because all the good people had left, and now suddenly they were scrambling. And the same with tour guides and stuff. We need to make sure that we actually come out of this strong, and then have the capacity to do it. Because otherwise, you get a whole load of other PR issues and problems with consumers complaining.
And I guess that's very much in line with what we've been trying to achieve the whole time with this group, and keeping great agents connected and engaged, and talking about things that people could be working on, and getting ready for the other side, and upskilling and self-directed learning and all those things, so that we can, when that new customer that possibly hasn't used a travel agent before in the past, but we've got some great PR now, so we've promoted to the world that the only way forward is to use an Australian-based travel agent, accredited, and all of the things that we'll come up with. How do we make sure that those guys deliver, on what we're telling the wider travel community that they will deliver on? Because we all know that there's wouldn't say, look, it's probably been, maybe too many agents out there, or the standard of agent or level of agent, may have been sort of dropped over the recent years or whatnot, maybe whether it's trying to fill bums on seats or whatever's happened. So, we understand that there isn't, 100% of our agents out there in Australia, the best of the best agents with the experience levels and all the things that we do. So we know that sometimes the customer's experience isn't as good as what it could be.
Yeah.
So what I'm, I guess, getting at is what's your advice to those agents out there that will be in the game on the other side and plan to be in the game as we come out of this? How do we make sure that those agents are delivering on what we're going to promise to the travel community as far as expertise, transparency, trustworthiness, delivering on what they say they're going to do, all of those things? How do you see that sort of panning out?
The biggest risk for a travel agent and for a tour operator or wholesale, whatever, is if your product becomes commoditized. And if you become commoditized, really, what value are you adding? If a hotel room's a hotel room is a hotel room, what is it that sets your hotel apart? What is it that sets you as a travel consultant apart as opposed to somebody else? And on the touring side of things, same. Anybody can show you Paris, right? But it's how you show. It's how you do Paris as a tour operator or as a tour guide, which will set you apart and which will have people coming back. So from a travel agent perspective, it comes down to where you're in the job because you're passionate about travel. You've also got to be passionate about the customer service side of things, and making sure that you have that knowledge. And now is that perfect downtime to be doing the training, doing stuff. We're doing it internally here. Every day. We was just up in one of our meeting rooms, and it's sort of welcome to Colombia. There was the person doing the training session was dressed up in Colombian clothing, and they had food, and getting everybody into it. And it's not even one of our big selling destinations. In fact, we've got no big selling destinations at the moment. But it's getting to that level where, okay, let's use this as an opportunity to really learn. I did a presentation with my Cato hat on, first time at the ETG conference last year, and I've done it at a couple of other conferences since, about being a touring expert. In the same way that so many consultants and travel agencies out there are cruising experts, and they know the difference between a Silver Seas and a P&O, and they'd never put a P&O client on a Silver Sea cruise or the other way around. But what's the level of knowledge around touring? And consultants using that same approach in terms of putting the right customer on the right tour? Because there is just as much variety in the touring world as there is in the cruising world. And you put the wrong client on the wrong tour, and they're going to have a horrible experience. So now's the time to, okay, what is the difference between a Bunnik Tours or a Wendy Wu or an Albatross or a Globus? And, get to that level of understanding so that when the customers do come in, and you can qualify them and you can give them exactly the right product. I've got friends of mine who I would not put on a Bunnik tour because they're not suitable for us, but they are suitable for other tour companies. I would happily sell them on one of those other tours. Right? So it's getting that knowledge, and that's the bit that a website's not going to deliver. And a commoditized product, if you look at tours as commoditized products, then you'll get it right some of the time, but you won't get it right all of the time. If you actually have that knowledge, you add that value, and you can tell the person, okay, this is why for you, this is the tour company you should be going with. And now's the time to learn all of that stuff. It's the same with airlines.
Yeah. And look, we'd be bad not to check in on the Bunnik side of things while we got you. Obviously, we had Bunnik in the early days of these Zooms. Nicole jumped on and gave us a bit of an update of what happened in your space, and feeling that sort of Bunnik has always had that social distancing has been part of your sort of ethos of those smaller groups and those maximum 20s and all the things that we know about Bunnik. But what are you guys planning on at the moment? What are you working through? What's the future look like? What's the most important stuff in the Bunnik world at the moment?
Yeah, that looks interesting in terms of a lot of tour companies obviously working towards now with less people on a bus, social distancing. We've done that for years. We've always used full-size coaches with maximum 20 on board. As I always say, my wife's lovely. I wouldn't want to sit next to her every day, and she'd feel the same way about me on tour. So we've always been able to spread out, which is great. Uh, Internally, what we're doing here is what I was just saying about training. So it's a lot of focus on training and development of the staff in terms of product, in terms of selling, customer service, every part of the process. A lot of cross training between departments, so that there's a greater understanding between sales and ops and product and inbound. We've got an inbound division as well. I spoke before about silos within the industry. Within each company, you tend to have that as well, with this department versus that department. So we're breaking down all of those sorts of things. There is no departments anymore within the company seating plan. So you could be sitting, if you're in res, you could be sitting next to a product person on one side and ops person on the other. The other things we're working on, surprisingly enough, we're pivoting. As everybody else is, but again, not in the way that we're doing it for the sake of doing it. So next week we'll be launching a South Australian tour, because that's where we've got a point of difference. South Australians are home. I'll actually be escorting it. And the tour will include a behind-the-scenes tour of Bunnik Tours, so you can actually see where your tour is made and created. We'll show you our 1928 ballroom that we've got in the premises here, and even take you down to the basement, and then show you all of the things that we love about South Australia. Now, that's a point of difference, and it doesn't become a commoditized tour. If we were to do a tour between Brisbane and Cairns, what's our point of difference? It all looks lovely up there, but we don't know it as well as what we do South Australia. So yeah, we'll be launching South Australia first, and then some other targeted domestic stuff. Little Windmill Marketing, we launched that about 3 weeks ago now, which is our own marketing company. One of the strengths that we've always had is that we've always done everything ourselves. When I said at the beginning of the conversation, we shut our borders on our 25th anniversary. When we started, we were a retail travel agency with 3 or 4 of us. Over that 25 years, we've transformed and got into all sorts of different areas. Be that corporate travel was quite a big division for us after Ansett collapsed. We went into that area. Inbound, we've always been doing. I did all the travel arrangements for the Sydney Olympics for all the teams that were training here in South Australia, working with the South Australian government on pre-games training. We've always done everything ourselves. And marketing, when we then decided to launch our own tour company about 15 years ago, we'll do it all ourselves. So we've built up this incredible brand, but it's an incredible marketing team. And we want to keep that team intact. So those same skills that we're using to promote Bunnik Tours and build that brand, well, those skills can be used in any industry and in any company. So what we're working with is a number of travel agents at the moment, helping to work with their social media to redo their websites, their social media campaigns, etc. But we're also in other industries. There's a company working on carports and pergolas and stuff like that. So it's about keeping the team strong and together, and that then potentially is something that will divest away from tourism, so that it helps pay the power bills.
And that's great. And for me, the whole time I'm just thinking, from a travel agent's point of view, how does that resonate with them, individually? And really for me, it's, hearing that, understanding what you're good at, and what's already in your wheelhouse, what are you already comfortable in, and what do you feel that you could contribute, and then maybe there's an opportunity to diversify, where you draw an income.
Yes.
You know, you guys as tour companies, you've got to find another way to bring in income. And
Yeah.
agents are the same thing. If you can't sell travel, what do you do really well in that space? And then how can you expand on that a little bit further to
Yeah.
maybe draw an income?
What's the niche?
Yeah.
You know, one thing I've learned over all of these years is nothing is rocket science. You know, we went into the corporate game with no corporate experience. We went into tour operating. We'd never run a tour company before. We learned, and you know, at that stage, the thought of 15 years ago us having our own marketing company just seemed crazy. But it is actually, well, we've got those skills, so why not do it?
Yeah.
You know, that whole thing about my YouTube channel. I'd never had any skills in that area, but I saw somebody do it, and I thought, oh, they're just using their mobile phone and waving it around, and it's got 100,000 views. Oh, let me give it a go. I've got a camera, and I've done a couple of little travel videos, and you know, and it just takes off from there. Just give it a go.
I think that's the key, isn't it? Give it a go, and see what happens. I mean, most people got into travel in a similar way. You know, that sounds like a good idea. That's something I'm a little bit passionate about. I like talking about holidays. How about I give that a go?
Yeah.
You know, and then you figured out how to use these crazy GDS systems and all the other stuff that you just have to learn. It looks like Japanese when you first look at it, but then eventually it becomes second nature. So,
yeah,
you know, nothing's too hard. If you're interested in it, or you've got a little bit of that capability, have a crack, see what happens. And I think it's important that
you're a perfect example of that.
Yeah, well, there you go. I don't think I'd ever interviewed anybody ever, in any way, shape, or form, even live. I can't even think about doing events, you know, or even really being one of those, you know, Q&A panels or whatever. I don't think I've sat on a few, but I don't think I've ever hosted one.
No.
You know, we've all seen those in the travel industry a ton of times. But yeah, I just, you know, have a crack, you know, see what happens. But I think it's important because, you know, one elephant in the room that's key for a lot of people to really understand is that how you got your income up until this point is not necessarily how you're going to get your income moving forward, especially in the short term. So
exactly,
when JobKeeper runs out, for a lot of people, there's going to be a need for you to diversify yourself and figure out a way to draw an income in some way, shape, or form, while still being able to have this as, you know, your side hustle, or you know, still being part of who you are and what you want to do. But you know, there's a need for income at some point.
Exactly, and even with JobKeeper, you know, we all went into this thinking, oh, it's 3 to 6 months. You know, over the last 2 weeks, I think we've all realised now that this is 12 to 18 months, and the financial sacrifices we were all able to make for 3 months, we're not necessarily able to make them for 12 or 18 months. So finding some sort of, let's say, side hustle or you know, some other alternative forms of income are going to be really important. Yeah, and what you were saying before in terms of interviews and stuff reminded me of a good friend of mine in America. I was speaking to him, and he runs a training company, corporate training company, and they're obviously struggling as well at the moment. He was telling me about an intern that he had last summer, and the challenge he said to him on his first day, he said, "Oh, what are you going to do?" So he was struggling to find this guy some work, and he said, "If you could interview anybody in the world, who would it be?" And the intern said, "Oh, Mr. Ford, you know, the guy that runs Ford Motor Company, or you know, one of the Ford family." And my mate Jeb said, "Okay, that's your task for the summer, right? To interview this person." And he did it. And you've just got to think big. And Jeb, he also runs an aviation YouTube channel, and he interviewed Ed Bastian, the head of Delta, and that purely came out of that thing. He said, "Oh yeah, I set the intern a job like that. I'd love to interview this guy." Sent him an email, and it worked. So, you know, you've done the same here. And in it, anybody in whatever capacity they set your sights high, and then just go for it. you've already shown that you've got a passion for the travel industry. You're in this industry because you love travel. Well, how can you take that to the next level? And if you can find a niche out of that, fantastic. And because that's what this industry needs above all else: people that are passionate and happy to keep working in it. And that's why, at the same time, it's so bloody heartbreaking, depressing for all of us that are in it. Yeah, seeing what's happened to it, but we know we'll all be flying again.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And look, a huge amount of value today, Dennis, jumping on and sharing what's happening in your world and the Cato world and all of that. So look, mate, we really appreciate you taking the time and sharing. You're obviously a busy man with lots of hats on and lots to do. But before we do let you go, if you can think of maybe one other person or two other people or someone that you'd like to nominate to jump on and share their story and add as much value as you have today.
Yeah, look, thank you. Well, hopefully it hasn't been too rambly. Once I see a camera, I just talk. So, thanks for having me on. Look, I would recommend strongly Liz Anderson. She's the vice chair of Cato and MD of Sundowners Overland Tours. So she does the Trans-Siberian Railway, and she's got some fantastic stories to tell. And Ewan from Albatross is always good value. You'll never die wondering there in terms of what he's thinking and opinions. So both would be very entertaining.
Great. We'll tag them both in and hopefully get them on as well to share what's happening in their world. And we'll drop down all the links to the email address for suggestions, and we'll pop the link up for your YouTube channel so people can go on and check out what you've been doing in the airline review space as well. A really good resource for agents, if they're coming out the other side of this, like we talk about self-directed learning and getting ready and upskilling for the other side. It's key. So, mate, again, thank you. Huge amount of value again. And we look forward to seeing everything that comes out of this work that you're doing with Cato and the collective approach to the industry and rebuilding for the other side. And, good luck with all of that. And as you said, we're all in this together. So, let's look forward to catching up on the other side of all this.
Thank you. Yeah, well, that's the one thing that we're really looking forward to, is there's going to be one massive piss up at the end of at the end of all of this. We're going to come together and shared experiences and have a few drinks. Yeah. Zoom is fine, but we've all got to come back together again. So it may not be for a few months, but it'll happen.
It's going to be huge.
Yeah, thanks for having me on. Mate. Yeah. Really appreciate it.
Awesome. Thanks, Dennis. Talk soon.
Thanks.
See ya.
Bye.